the reality is that you're entering their world, right? When you enter into the agent's world, whether it be for on market or agent outreach for off market, whatever that is, you're entering into their domain. Oh, it's a trap.
There's traps here. Guys, welcome back to video 3 in this Masterclass series.
Boom.
This is going amazing. We're talking all about wholesaling with real estate agents, the on-market model to find and wholesale properties that you can make a lot of money doing this. And guys, if you're new to wholesaling, aspiring wholesaler, maybe even an active wholesaler, and you want to add on-market to your marketing channels, this is the series for you because Jamil and I are breaking this down step by step, all the things you need to know from the front end to the back end, all of it. And this is a pivotal video in this series right now that we're going to be covering because we're going to be covering what Jamil calls agent traps.
Oh, it's a trap.
There's traps here, right?
Yes.
And really, when you think about it, nothing's perfect without any pitfalls or challenges or obstacles or objections. Certainly not on market because, again, you're dealing with, you're trying to bring parties together, right? There's a seller, there's an agent, there's you, there's a buyer, all these different parties, different personalities, different ways of doing things, preconceived notions. And we have to navigate all that. The wholesaler's job is like getting all these people in the right spot, title company, right? And so it can be very challenging just in and of itself. Wholesaling can have some challenges where you're trying to navigate through some of these, muddy waters sometimes. And no two agents are created equal.
They're not.
They're all a bit different. And so Jamil, why is, first of all, let's start out with, we'll get into the traps. I think you've got like 12 or 13 of
15 of them, actually.
15,
As
wow.
we were talking, I was typing
two
there.
more?
There was one more there that I had to throw in there because you reminded me of.
We're going to break them down for you guys so that not only do you know what they are, you can see them coming.
Yep.
You anticipate them and then know how to overcome them and deal with them. But Jamil, starting out here, why is it so valuable to understand that there are traps with the agent model?
Well, the reality is that you're entering their world, right? When you enter into the agent's world, whether it be for on market or agent outreach for off market, whatever that is, you're entering into their domain, you're entering into their glossary of terms, you're entering into the
way
rules,
of being,
the rules that they have to follow for agency, brokerage rules, paperwork rules,
culture,
yeah,
some culture. There's a lot of culture that they do.
There's a huge culture between real estate agents, and so really understanding what that culture is, how to navigate it, and not trying to go against the grain. Remember, Jerry said it in the last video, finding alignment is really important. And so understanding the way an agent operates will let you see the traps that they lay. And now, I don't want you to think of this in a term of the agent is trying to put you in a bad spot or take advantage of you or do anything that's unethical. It's not true. But what they are going to do is they're going to try to push for specific things that they want, or sometimes they don't understand the assignment of what you've asked. And so over the years that I've been doing this, I've come up with common situations that occur. And I call them agent traps because they're going to happen to you. If you do agent outreach or if you go and find deals on market, one of these 15 or all of these 15 are going to happen to you over time. In fact, if you do this long enough, I guarantee every single one of these will be something that you'll deal with. And you'll have this video as a really great resource to go in, watch real quick and be like, oh yeah, I remember Jerry and Jamil talked about this one. This is what I need to do, right? So let's get started.
Yeah,
so
let's get into it.
My first one, right? When I'm doing agent outreach. So this is the shotgun approach that Jerry talked about last time, where I'm calling agents cold and I want to find out if they have anything coming to market that hasn't been listed yet, that's in original condition or needing a lot of work. Now, I'm very specific when I say coming to market that hasn't been listed yet. And I say those words, and remember, you have to make those words your own, right? So however you want to phrase it, you can even say what I just said, in original condition or needing a tremendous amount of work that hasn't been listed on the MLS yet. Now, why that's a good thing is because you'll get a pocket listing, right? What we're essentially asking for is a pocket listing. So an agent, if they're not listening to you, one of the first things that they'll do if they hear you're an investor, you're looking for a fixer-upper, but they didn't hear the part about you wanting something off market, is they'll go home, they'll go to their computer, and they'll set you up on the drip campaign. You know the drip campaign.
Yep.
That's where they just set up a search on their computer, and they just start inundating you with emails of properties. Now, I kind of actually look at this in two ways, right? The first thing is what they're typically doing with that search is they're entering in specific words like fixer-upper, needs work, TLC.
Maybe a price filter,
yeah,
like
sweat
stuff.
equity, something.
Yeah.
They're making parameters. But the reality is that they didn't actually hear what you asked them.
Or you communicated poorly.
Or you communicated poorly, right? Maybe you forgot to say it. Now, if you forgot to say it, that's on you. And your job would then be to call that agent back, because this gives you a great reason to call them back. I look at this as not a reason to think, oh, this agent was, sucky. They didn't listen to me. They didn't follow the assignment. I look at it as another opportunity to call them back and reestablish connection, right? So I'll say, hey, Jerry, Jamil calling. I spoke to you yesterday about needing something in original condition or something I could fix up. You set me up on a drip campaign, which, by the way, thank you so much. I appreciate it, but I'm really looking for something that hasn't been listed yet. So do you have anything like that I can take a look at? Now, because you will remember that I had said that to you from yesterday's conversation, you'll be like, oh yeah, oops, sorry about that. Now, I have two things, right? One, Jerry understands the assignment, so the next time, maybe when Jerry has a property, he's gonna be really aware of what I'm looking for. But B, this is like a lead list. So when they set me up on the drip campaign, now I no longer assign that agent has rights to represent me on any of these properties because I didn't ask for the drip campaign. I never asked them to set me up on a search.
So you're not agreeing for them to be a buyer's agent or anything like that.
I'm not agreeing for them to be a buyer's agent, but they've just done a lot of work for me.
Yeah.
Because now I get emailed a list of all these fixer-uppers, of all these houses needing TLC or maybe priced well, and now I can go directly to that listing agent and get that deal under contract. So the drip campaign, although it's a trap with lots of goodies in it if you know how to deal with it. Yeah. Have you ever been set up on a drip campaign?
Oh yeah, before? All the time, yeah. And this just happened to my son who's learning wholesaling. He's like, Dad, so I had the conversation with the agent, and next thing you know, I'm getting all these emails, and I said, show me. And I've seen it, and he didn't know what it was, but I knew what it was. And I said, okay, they misunderstood or you miscommunicated what you were looking for.
Right.
Because they're just setting you up with active listings that they think fit your criteria.
Right.
And that's all this is that you're getting.
And it's even worse when they just send you a bunch of renovated houses. Then they really didn't understand what you were saying. They're just like, that agent and you were on two different planets, right? So it's a really good indicator of A, how well you communicated or how well they listen. And then B, it's a really good opportunity for you to re-engage with them and maybe get a really good lead list for you in the future.
Now let's add to that, because this I think fits, it might be a different one, but when you're doing the sniper where you're going direct, you also have to be very clear that you're not asking them to be a buyer's agent.
Correct.
Because that happens too with the sniper method. Like you're calling on a specific listing, you tell them you're an investor, and then they're like, oh, well, I'll send you properties. And all they're doing is they're setting you up.
What do you say when they're actively trying to change the relationship from I'm calling about this house to be my buyer's agent? What would you say to kind of combat that?
So what I say is look, we don't work specifically with a buyer's agent when we're looking for properties. We prefer to work with each individual listing agent on their specific listings. So if you agent, you come across something, you're sitting down with somebody, it looks like it might be a property that you're considering a listing, or it might be something that would fit for an investor, a cash offer, call us. We're your buyer, and we'll work something out with you before you list it. Like then we turn it back into that conversation. But you have to be very clear that you're calling them about their deal. You want to make an offer, and you're coming unrepresented, and you're not looking for buyer representation going forward.
Right.
So you got to find a way to say that to where they understand that.
Yeah.
Because some get confused. They think, oh, okay, well, let me be your buyer's agent. I'll help you find a property in the market.
Right. And I appreciate them wanting to do that, because it's like they're doing their job.
Yeah.
Right. And they're taking the lead one step further, and they're trying to establish their agency relationship with you, which kudos to you, agent. That's a good thing to do.
And by the way, don't ever do that, guys. Don't ever sign a buyer's agency agreement.
It's in here. And we're going to get into that. Like there's certain ones you can sign and certain ones you can't. But specifically, what I would say is when you do get the drip, or when you are talking to the agent and they want to be your buyer's agent, I'll say, look, I work in a big group, and unfortunately, there's other people on my team that are actively pursuing deals. Now, if you send me something that's another agent's listing, that might turn into an offer coming from my organization from like two different places. And I don't want to have you look bad. I don't want my other offer to look bad. And so specifically, I want to work on the deal that I send you directly, so that That way, or if it's one you control because it's your potential listing or your listing that you're about to list that you haven't put on the market yet, then I know there's not going to be another one of my reps or another person in my office that's offering on this property, and we won't have these uncomfortable conversations to have of why did we get 2 offers from the same company.
And that's important, because if the agent thinks, if you don't clarify that and the agent thinks that what you're looking for is buyer agency, and they start sending you stuff, and then you go work out a deal directly, let's say, and they find out, you'll fry that relationship.
100%.
Right? They'll be offended because they'll be like, I sent you that lead and you went around me.
Yeah.
So that's why you don't just ignore that and be like, oh, thanks for the goodie list. Now I'm going to just go direct.
Right.
You want to go back to them, like you said, and communicate to them and say, hey, thanks for setting that up. But just so you know, we already have access to all the active properties. So that list is helpful, but we already know about the actives.
Correct.
And that's telling them, in a way, you're saying, and I clarify that more, but what you're saying to them is, look, I don't need you to bring me what's on the market. I need you to bring me what's off market.
Yeah. And also you're establishing yourself as an investor or as a buyer that's actively looking a lot, right? And that's exciting for a real estate agent because, at the end of the day, a regular retail client, I mean, their moods change like the weather, right? What they want to do, their likes, where they want to live, the school district, all the things. I mean, we do want this. We don't want a pool. We do want this school district. We don't. We need a garage. We don't need a garage. Like,
can we go look at that house again?
Yeah,
third time.
and it's
like
all
this stuff.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Especially
and then they don't buy again for 7 years or whatever the
Right.
statistic is.
Right. So an agent looks at that relationship and they say, well, yeah, that's one deal, and I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to spend a lot of time and a lot of gas. And at the end of the day, they may not even use me. They might just buy the house off of Zillow, which happens a lot
Or
real
go
estate agents.
with their sister-in-law who's an agent.
Right. So there's so many things that people will do. And so when a real estate agent really understands the value that you're offering, like what you're bringing to the table, they will understand it, and then they will honor that relationship. They'll honor what you're providing and say, you know what, I'm going to do a really good job here, and I'm going to try to cultivate this as much as you're trying to cultivate it for a long-term benefit.
Yeah, that's so good. So that's a trap to watch out for.
Yeah. The second trap that I found is when they do understand what I've asked, when I said, send me something in original condition or needing a bunch of work that hasn't been listed on the MLS yet, and they send me another wholesaler's deals. Now, this is kind of, it's cool, but also problematic because they actually provided what I asked for.
Off-market properties.
It needs a lot of work. It's probably priced pretty good if they've looked at it and they sent it to me, right? So why now am I saying no? Why would you say no when this is exactly what you asked me for and I've provided it for you? What's the problem here, sir? And that's how I've been, addressed from an agent when they've sent me a wholesaler's deal. And that's when I have to just be honest, right? And I say, look, I'm very active in the business. I do a lot of transacting. I fix and flip a lot of houses. I plan to.
If you're new, right?
Yeah.
Can you say it that way?
I plan to do a lot of business, but here's the thing: I have a huge network. I've got a huge network, and I already see these wholesale deals, and I get them sent to me directly from the wholesaler, and so I can buy them directly from them without having to input an agent and then have to pay a commission on it. So I would really just prefer any opportunity that you have direct control of, right? So it gives them the honest answer, and it lets them know that, okay, they're not interested in seeing other wholesalers' deals. They want to see stuff that I have agency on or that I have an opportunity to get directly from a homeowner.
And you know what's great about this, Jamil, is really all you're doing is you're just recommunicating. Communication is like the key here. And you're not taking this as, these really aren't even traps for you. It's just an opportunity for me to clarify how we're going to work together as wholesaler agent. And these are just some miscommunications that are very common that happen because they don't really understand necessarily what we do,
right,
but they're eager to work with us, right? And that's what's going on here a lot of times.
Yeah. The next one that I've seen is this is like the really, really astute kind of all about their business agent. Some will call them greedy. I don't think it's greedy to be all about your money. I think that's good.
Yeah.
But it's the agent who says, well, why would I want to send you an investor deal? I already work with a bunch of investors and they list all of their properties with me after they flip them. So unless you're going to let me list the property for you once you flip the house, I'm really not interested in sending you anything. right? And that's just an agent who's just like, listen,
That's
dude,
on top of their game.
they're on top of their game. They know their business, and they're not messing around, right? They're like, you either promise to list the property with me in the future, or I'm not going to send you the opportunity. So I deal with that in a couple of ways, right? The first one is I address the conversation of other investors, right? Say, I love that you work with investors, so you understand the mentality and you know what we're looking for. So I don't need to train you on numbers. So thank you. I appreciate you letting me know that. But I'm sure there's been situations where you've sent an investor a potential deal and they haven't bought it because maybe they've got too many projects going. Maybe they've got, liquidity situation. They're out of town on vacation. There's always a reason why something doesn't work for somebody at a specific time. I'm not telling you that I want to be your number one buyer right now because I haven't earned that position yet. But what I am saying is I want to give you an experience with me where I could become that. So the next time your investor passes on a deal, let me be your number two.
Yeah.
And
Great.
And it's like right away
Yeah.
they're like, okay,
Yeah.
I like that. I like that because you're not trying to take business away from my investor. Now, when they want the future listing promise, that's a tough one because as wholesalers, what we don't right out the gate call agents say, hi, my name is Jamil Damji, an active wholesaler here in the state of Arizona. We don't do that, right? We're not like, I'm a wholesaler, right? Of course, wholesaling is an exit strategy. And if I'm asked if I wholesale, I always tell the truth. I never lie. I will always tell the truth. However, the reality is I do fix and flip. And the reality is wholesalers, your buyers are going to fix and flip. And so the kind of property we're looking for are fix and flips. And so that's why we ask agents for properties that could be flipped. Now, the whole list the property with me when it's over. The way that I go about that is I flip a lot of homes and I have established relationships with agents that I've already worked with. And these are decades-long relationships. Now, I'm not opposed to interviewing you for that job. Like I would absolutely love to do more business with you, to do more deals, and to put you in a situation where you became a listing agent on my team. But I can't cross that bridge right now. Why don't we get a deal done? Let's see how we work together. And then if that pans out real well, you can come and be a listing agent on my team. So I'm not saying no, I'm not saying yes, I'm saying maybe one day in the future. And the reality is that if we do enough business together, I will give them a future listing. I will give them an opportunity because they're earning it. They deserve it.
Yeah. What a great way to handle that. You
Right?
know?
It's just like,
it's not overcommitting, but it's letting them know, hey, there's a shot here, but let's cross that bridge when it's time.
yeah, and it's real too, right? Because at the end of the day, humans have to earn each other's trust, and we don't just say to people, you get everything, right? There's never, and if somebody does do that and say that to you, then you can probably assume they're not being honest with you because that's just not the way that human dynamics work, right? We earn trust. We take baby steps on how we deal with people, and we give as we learn we can trust to give, right? And so I think that letting an agent know that this relationship is like any other, it's going to be quid pro quo. It's going to be give. We're going to keep giving. Each of us are going to give until we get to a point where we feel really comfortable with each other. And then who knows? Maybe you'll become the number one agent on my team.
And good agents understand that.
Yes.
And you know what, Jamil? I follow that same philosophy if I'm taking it down and I'm going to flip it myself. I even take, because you're a listing agent on a back end flip, like a remodel flip, that's a very specific type of listing agent you're looking for. And maybe they're doing, a discount for you or a flat fee, and you want that option, you want that. And not all agents that deal with distressed properties would make a good listing agent for a flip.
Correct.
So I've done that where I committed and I did it, and then I regretted
And
it
they did a
tremendously
terrible
because
job.
they just don't get retail and high, top end and how to deal with showings and open house, like all the things. So I never want to commit an agent I don't know to my back end
Right.
if that agent could jeopardize the success of that flip.
Right.
And so again, like you said, that's something that needs to be earned. So find a way to navigate away from committing to that, whether you're going to buy it yourself or wholesale it. So I love that. That's some great language there for that.
Yeah, and again, it just gives you the flexibility and kind of gives you a longer rope to play with, right? So this next one, we've talked about this in other videos, but I think it's really worthwhile expanding here. It's an agent who's uncomfortable with dual agency, right? And
They got an ethical
they got an
issue.
ethical thing, or they think they have an ethical thing, or they've heard about an ethical thing, or their broker has told them there's a problem, or whatever it is. they just are uncomfortable, or they feel like dual agency is not allowed, and maybe it is allowed, and you don't want to get argumentative.
A lot of it's fear, and it's not even legit. Like they're just
100%.
worried the seller might be upset about that.
Right. So how do you deal with it? What's your approach on dealing with an agent uncomfortable with dual agency?
Yeah, so it's very common, and so what I try to do is I try to help them feel comfortable about what we're doing. So I'll say to that agent, I'll say, look, we transact quite a bit. I really don't need you to represent me in anything other than facilitating the closing, but I get it. You're representing the seller and holding their hand through this whole process. That's totally great. I don't need a lot. I don't require a lot. I'm just offering this up for you because I value this relationship. I want to create an ongoing relationship. I want you to get compensated well, and I don't need representation. Like I don't have my own buyer representation, and I'm offering that up for you. And so you can let your seller know and feel comfortable that this is an investor that you're working with. It's someone that you know, someone that you trust, and that you're, helping facilitate this whole transaction to get a deal done. And so, I'm just trying to coach them through like, okay, how is this okay? How can you feel good about this? I'm okay that you're taking care of your seller, that type of language.
I love that. I think that's 1,000% going to work 99% of the time. And the 1% of the time that won't work, that's when I'll just say, you know what? I understand that there's no way for us to get to a level of comfort here. What if I just remain unrepresented and I just handle myself in the transaction? You worry about the seller in the transaction, but the 3% buyer's agency commissions, you can deal with how you want. So if you want to maybe give that back to the seller and let them net more money, that's totally okay. Maybe you could talk to the seller and see if they're willing to maybe give you a portion of that, because you still do have to communicate.
Like 4% instead of 3%, something like that. Yeah.
3. But at the end of the day, I want the best situation for you, the seller, and myself. And so I think this kind of makes the most sense. Yeah, and they like always go for it.
Yeah. We talked about that in another video where offer it and then let that agent figure out where they feel comfortable, right?
Yeah. And there was a mechanism you talked about on designation. So speak to that.
Yeah. So there's another representation called designated agency. That's the technical term for it. But designated agency just means that another agent in the same office or brokerage can represent the buyer. So they call it designated agency. When one agent has the listing, another agent in the same office has the buyer for it, right? And so that can happen. I don't think there's any states that don't allow designated agency. Right. And the reason why that still accomplishes the same goal is because those agents are going to collaborate and they're going to share in commission. Meaning, if the listing agent goes, let's say I'm the listing agent and Jamil's my buddy in the office and we're friends and we work together all the time. I might go to Jamil and I say, hey, I got a cash buyer on my own listing. I don't want to represent it to have conflict of interest, or I can't because we're in Florida or Texas. But can you handle my buyer for me and kick me back 1.5 of the 3, and I'm handing you a free lead. I'm handing you a free thing, and they're cash, and it should be pretty easy. And Jamil, what are you gonna be like? Heck yeah,
of course,
yeah, heck yeah, no problem, buddy. Thank you.
Let me take you out to dinner after.
that, and some agents, just to divert away any issue, have a buyer's agent on their team. Like you're actually my guy, you're my team, and you handle my buyers, and I handle my sellers.
Right.
But we all know that you're getting something, and it's all coming back to me.
Of course.
That's how the big ones do it.
They do, and they do it because they know that for the real business, this is how it's done.
Yeah.
And so they've already.
It just eliminates any conflict of interest.
100%.
But really, what's happening is Jamil's just got his license last month. He's on my team. I'm paying him $20 an hour, and it's all coming back.
Of course.
Because it can go to you and then come right back to me as a referral.
Right.
And that's what the big ones are doing.
Yeah, and I just take my fee, and I'm still learning, right? I'm learning. Jerry's teaching me or whatever that is, but yeah, that's how
if you ever look at these big brokerages where like they're doing $100 million a year, or these crazy numbers, you're like, how in the world is that one agent doing that type of volume? They're a mini brokerage. They've got buyer's agents on their team, and they're counting all of that commission into the big bucket.
Correct.
But it's all funneling back to the team lead or whatever.
Right. And everybody's making a wage.
Yeah. Right. They're all just making a wage.
Yeah. The next one is fun, and this is actually where I think a lot of new wholesalers get stuck. So you started doing agent outreach, and you are doing cold calls and you hit it off with a realtor. You're like, I love this person.
They're super cool.
And they're super cool. And I told them what I'm doing, and they were like, oh, I love it.
Yeah.
How can I help? I want to be on your team. I want to do work for you. I want to, let's do this together. And so you get really excited, and you're like, I just think I hit gold, right? Like this, I just talked to this person, and they were really cool, and I told them what I do, and they want to do it with me, and they want to write offers for me. And so they started sending me a bunch of stuff, and they're like, let's offer on this, let's offer on this, let's offer on this. And so like you can sense that this agent is A, like really hardworking, B, understands the investor model, C, is willing to go out and do some work for you. Mm-hmm. The problem is now you've inserted a buyer's agent. And those offers are rarely going to get accepted. Yeah. Because here's what happens when you insert a buyer's agent into investor offer that needs to be lower than where a property is listed at. Typically what ends up happening is these buyer's agents, they're not building the rapport with the listing agent that they need to be building in order to actually sell the number that we need to get the property at. And so what these buyer's agents do is pretty much like what we talked about before, where you just send unsolicited lowball offers to people. Same
effect.
It's the same effect. Yeah. It's just coming by way of an agent now, right? And so they just get this email from an agent in their inbox, and there's no rapport. I don't know who you are. It's just an offer. It's like $50,000 less than my list price. And what ends up happening to that offer is delete.
And you're not creating that connection with that agent because there's a buyer's agent, and they just know, okay, here's an investor with a buyer's agent feeding, lowballing all over the place. So it just doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It
too
doesn't.
Much friction.
Yeah, too much friction. In fact, on our acquisition teams, we'll have licensed acquisition, and they technically could make the offer as a buyer's agent. Right. And in my mind, maybe I'm thinking, oh, well, then I don't have to pay him a commission. It's coming from the seller. This is awesome. No, it's not. No. We'll tell them, you offer it all up, and I'm compensating you outside of that. So that way we can continue to offer that.
And get the deal.
We're after the deal, not the commission. I always tell my licensed acquisitions people, we're after the deal, not the buyer's agent commission. Let them have that.
That's it.
Or take care of it.
Yeah, and honestly, understanding the difference there and reducing that friction will get you so much
better. If anything, like let's say you run into that, maybe you offer that guy a sales position in your wholesale operation and say, hey, dude, we've done some stuff together. You look like you're really ambitious. You know, maybe you come on, or maybe because then they could make the offer, waive the commission, or give it up, right? And then you compensate them.
The way I do Monique, where it's like Monique is not really on she's not my 1099 employee by any means, but the way I compensate her is as if she was my GV partner.
Outside of the commissions.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I say, look, Monique, I'm going to give you half of what I make on every deal. And so she's super excited about that because she understands if I get it lower, then we make more. And if he sells it for more, we make more. So our interests are absolutely aligned, right? Yeah. And that's the kind of relationship you want. So you just got to know how to harness the power of a really good asset in the appropriate situation in the appropriate time.
Perfect. Yep, that's a great track.
Yeah, the great one. The next one, you already brought it up earlier on in the conversation here. It's the exclusive buyer-broker agreement. Yeah. This one is the worst because it gets sandwiched into your offer, and they don't even tell you that it's coming sometimes. In fact, 9 out of 10 times they don't even tell you that it's coming. When you're talking to them and you're like, hey, I want to offer this much money on the house, and they're like, okay, I got it, cool. What's your email? I'll send you the offer. They send you the offer. And
it's a DocuSign?
It's a DocuSign. And somewhere in there is an exclusive buyer-broker agreement. Now, why are these dangerous? An exclusive buyer-broker agreement is not property specific, A. B, it's exclusive to that agent. And C, it's for a specific amount of time.
Usually 6 months.
Which means that you're going to need to pay that agent a commission on any property you buy, any property that you contract and buy for the next 6 months.
Yep.
That to me is like, what?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
right?
No way.
So how do you get around the exclusive buyer-broker agreement?
It goes back to that conversation where you have to help that agent understand that if it's their own listing, you're making an offer, this is a one-off. I will do this again and again with you on your own listings. Or if you bring me something off market, I'm happy to do not an exclusive, but a specific, right? So hey, if you want to send me a specific where it's like an agreement on this particular property with this particular address, fine. But not that blanket open-ended one.
Correct.
Those are the ones that are dangerous. So you have to know to look for that. You have to be watching for that in the documents when you're going to sign a contract on a deal.
So
because they'll sneak it in there, like you said.
Oh, every time it's like peppered in there.
Yeah.
It's between like the lead paste paint addendum and the purchase contract, and it's just stuffed in there, and it's like sneaky. But really, a property specific buyer broker agreement is what I say, just like you just mentioned. That way they get their buyer broker agreement
They
signed.
feel good.
They feel good about it, but it's specific to this property. And if we don't do business on this property, then we don't really have to take this any further, right? So I think it's the let's like hold hands before we kiss kind of situation, right? So like that's what it is. And you can use analogies like that. Like, you know, I want to really work with you, but you know, an exclusive for 6 months, we're not really there yet. So let's hold hands before we kiss. Let's make this property specific. And then let's continue and see how we work together in the future. Right? I don't want to just say I'll never sign that with you, but I do want to say it's not happening now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, all right, the 7th one.
7.
Oh, this one doesn't
Doozy.
seem like a big problem in the beginning, but it becomes a problem in the transaction where the agent is insistent on using their title company.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Why is that a problem, Jerry?
This is a huge problem. This can kill your deal.
Yep.
And I've had it kill my deals. First of all, you got to understand most agents are going to have, if they're active agents, they're going to have a title rep and a title company that they love, that they prefer. They know that agent. They've done deals there. Oftentimes they're getting a referral fee, so they're getting a kickback for that. And they just are like, man, I don't want to use another title company with somebody I don't know, don't trust. I know this person over here is going to get it done for me. And they push hard for their title company. And so I am very particular about this one. We have a clause in all of our contracts that say seller agrees to use buyer's title of choice. That gives me the ability to pick any title company I want. If I know I've got one that I for sure want to use, I'll put them in there. But this can be a touchy point. I've actually had deals break up over this.
Yeah.
Where I just can't get. Now, if they're adamant and they absolutely will not do it and they want that title company, I will call that title company and I'll say, hey, tell me what your experience is with doing assignments and working with investors. And I'll basically feel them out and take the risk. Like, I think they know what they're doing. I think they can get it done and maybe go with them, even though I've never worked with them. But the problem here, guys, is if you go with a title company that does not understand how to transact assignments or wholesaling, then they could blow the whole deal up.
Oh,
because
they'll tell the seller, hey, these guys are trying to do something illegal.
Yeah.
Or they'll tell the agent, like, hey, what's going on here? The buyer is trying to do something funny. I got in a document and that they're not the buyer anymore. What's happening?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, like, now your real estate agent's up in arms because they're like, what are you doing? And the seller is up in arms because the title officer has given them this idea that what you're doing isn't, like, above board. And it does blow the deal up. Everybody gets upset. People don't understand what's happening. They trust the title officer because they're like, the title company says this is illegal. It's got to be illegal. How many times have you had a title company say that wholesaling or assignments are illegal?
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. I had one where agent comes back all upset and says, title company won't do it. And I said, okay, well, let's change title companies. And they're like, the damage was done, like the agent said, my title company said these are illegal and you can't do it. I'm like, well, no, that's not true. We do them every day. Let's switch title companies. And by then, agent was like, oh, hell no. Seller was like, oh, no. And it just killed the deal. Like, they wouldn't do it. Because the title lady there that didn't understand what we were doing said you can't do this. Yeah.
So it's really important
it's a big deal.
That you have to direct title. So again, if you're watching this right now and you're starting to do a direct agent model and you haven't yet made a relationship with an investor-friendly title company, now's your turn and your time and your signal to get that done before you go any further. You have to make an arrangement with the title company, make sure that they are comfortable with assignments, like Jerry said, that they understand double closings if you need to do that. Whatever it is, they have to have an experience with wholesaling.
And this can't just be a verbal conversation. Like you really, I want to get it in writing. So like I said, I want it to say, I want to add a clause in my contract. There's that little paragraph where you can add things where it says, seller agrees to use buyer's title of choice or X company, right? If you already have one, like you said, which is a very smart way to go, get one that is in your market, you're really comfortable with. But if you don't get that in there, and then after the fact, post signatures, agents like, I opened escrow, and here we go, and you're like, oh man, we're screwed now, right?
Big
like,
time. Big time.
You're late now.
Yeah,
you're too late now.
And it's not to say that if you are in one of these situations and you can't unravel it, you can do things like transactional funding, where you close it at the first title company and then sell it at another one. But it just gets
messy.
It's messy. It costs money, and
it's not going to be
fun.
it's not going to be back to back. There's going to be a time period there between those.
Yep.
So that's a good one.
Yeah.
In fact, this brings up a really good point. And I can't remember if we got this down as a video, but guys, remember, you're not writing the contract.
Right. Oh,
the agent is.
Yes. Why is that, Jerry?
Well, the agent is going to use their state-approved contract that they have to use, and they're all going to look different. Every state's going to look different. Sometimes brokerages have different types of things. So they're going to write that. But your job is to make sure you get everything in that contract you need so that you can do your wholesale.
Correct.
So that's why, like, what we have is we have a 10-point offer sheet. We can give that away for free. I'll put a link in the description, but it's basically, okay, here's all the things I need to make sure get covered in this contract that the agent's going to put together. Because if you don't, you're going to, and these aren't just traps. These are like, there's a pit of snakes at the bottom of that
bombs.
one.
Yeah.
It's a bear trap that just went on your feet,
Big
you know,
time.
like it's going to kill your deal.
Yeah, big time. The next one, this one is especially for what we do when we're maybe virtually wholesaling, or if we're calling on mass and really trying to get out like 5 or 10 verbal offers a day on on-market listed properties, is an agent who requires you to see the property before they'll even submit your offer to a seller, or before they'll even have a conversation with you.
Yes.
And
this is a big one.
It's a big one, right?
It comes up a lot.
Have you even seen the property yet? You don't want to lie.
Yeah.
And here's why.
Yeah.
I have lied before, and I got caught. I was like, so I had, I was calling an agent, and they're like, "Have you even seen the property yet?" And I saw the pictures. I seen what I needed to see, right? And I was like, "Yeah, I was just there." Oh yeah? Well, how come my Supra doesn't show me that anybody entered the property? And I was like, "Ooh, crap! They can do that."
There's no showing schedule.
I didn't know. I had no idea that they would be able to tell and figure it out. I was so new, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, "Dang it! I got caught." And that actually taught me that was really bad, and I should never do that again. And so, after having the egg on my face of that situation, I'm like, how do I get around this? Like, I don't want to go and view every property that I'm making a verbal offer on, nor do I have the time, nor do I have the desire to do that. Because, Jerry, if you're talking to an agent and an agent's showing you a property, right? How much of your day would it take for you to get into your car and go see a property?
Half the day.
Half the day is
half
gone.
your day's gone. Yeah.
Right? So how are you going to do this as a voluminous business if you're out driving a property every single day? It's not going to work. So what I like to say is, thank you. I believe that you took some very good pictures for this. And, unless you hit anything on the photos, which I don't think you would have done, I am really good at knowing my numbers based off of the pictures. And when we do our inspection, I'm going to need to bring my inspector, contractors, and my whole team over. And it would be absolutely irresponsible of me to take them off of what they're doing right now and bring them to a house I don't even have under contract yet. I think you should understand that that's just not possible. So let's get this thing locked up. Let's get it under contract. Then I can take my people off of their current jobs and bring them all over. But for now, I really believe that the pictures that you've taken will suffice.
Yeah, great. I do something very similar where when they say that, I'll say, no, I haven't seen it. But is there anything going on here that's not obviously represented in these pictures I'm looking at that you would want to tell me about? Like maybe there's not a good picture of the roof. I'll say, how's the roof? I'll ask some questions and I'll say, look, we know our numbers really well. As long as what I'm looking at is reflective of what's going on, I really don't need to see it right now to make the offer. Now, however, Mr. Agent, we do like to have a few days where we'll do a walkthrough. Now, what's the walkthrough? It's for us to send our contractor, our investors and partners. We'll do a walkthrough. And that's just to see if there's anything going on that maybe we don't see, like a foundation issue or something that maybe we missed. But rest assured, if there is something that we find that we're not aware of that would actually change our price, we let you know right away. And what I'm doing there is it does a couple things. One, it's honest. It's letting them know you don't need to go see it. It's also letting them know that if something doesn't pencil here, like if we find out there's something going on, you're not telling me, then I'm positioning for a renegotiation if I need to.
Right.
And I don't do that as a strategy on purpose. It's just And what it does is it positions you so that when you go back and you're like, hey, actually it needs this, and this that I didn't know about. This is new information we gathered. And so that number doesn't work. We still want to buy it, but we need to be at this number. And they're not offended. I've never had an agent be offended on a renegotiation because I prepped them ahead of time with that inspection idea.
That's it.
But I'll tell them flat out, I'm like, I've seen enough. Like, I'm looking at it right now. I don't need to see it.
Yeah.
Now, what happens when the agent's like, okay, we will not accept offers unless you've seen it? Because I've had that happen.
Yeah. So in those instances where it's like, we're in a Mexican standoff.
Yeah.
And, it's like gun to everybody's head. We gonna do this or not, right? Then in that case, I will get my butt into a car and drive it, or I'll send somebody from TaskRabbit to go over and just snap some quick pictures.
Boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground. Like I'll do that. But at the end of the day, I try personally not to do it myself because I know the time value of my day. And I just can't justify going and viewing a property in the middle of the day when there's so many other things that I need to do.
Yeah, my fail-safe, like my backup when the agent's just adamant about it is if it's an active market I'm doing deals in, then I want to pre-establish boots on the ground. And boots on the ground is somebody that you can rely on that will go out to the property, do a walkthrough, take pictures and video, and let you know what's going on. And so like in my active markets, I want to have 2 or 3 of those, and I want them on speed dial. Like I want someone there in half an hour if I need them to be. Just in case, right? Something's going on. And so, but I do not want to abuse that person.
Right.
Because especially if it's a contractor or something and they're doing it just to help you, do not abuse that person.
No.
Like don't send them until you have a contract because otherwise they're going to get tired real quick of giving you bids.
Stop answering the phone.
Yeah. Because you're making them go out and look at properties that never go anywhere. I see wholesalers do this all the time. They get a contractor, they mislead the contractor. Contractor is going out looking at all these properties to give them the rehab number. And none of those properties go anywhere, and contractors like, I'm done working with you.
And they ghost.
Nothing ever happens.
And then you wonder why contractors are ripping people off for their deposits.
Right. Yeah.
Right? It's a hard game. It's definitely not easy. The next one, and I don't know if this is necessarily a trap, but it's definitely a requirement that can become problematic for people. And it's the ever elusive, send me a POF. Or a proof of funds.
Proof of funds.
Proof of funds are needed. You got to have a proof of funds if you're going to do business
and
this
is an on-market thing. Like off-market people don't worry about this very much, proof of funds, but this is every single
agent.
time.
It's a requirement. It's a broker requirement to submit any offer with a proof of funds.
And earnest money, which I'm sure is on here we'll get to. But proof of funds is a big one that you're going to deal with almost every time.
Yep. So for me, I actually have set aside money for wholesalers to get a proof of funds. So if you don't have access to a proof of funds, my company will gladly do it. You can email flipfundllc@gmail.com. I will give you a proof of funds. Jerry, I'm sure you've got.
We do it in our Flipster software. If you're a Pro or Prime member, we do unlimited custom. So it's got your name, address, price. Yeah. So and then also another hack is you mentioned one, I mentioned one. A lot of hard money companies maybe will do one.
Yep. Hard money company is really good. The only thing that can happen with the hard money company is that you may need to show proof of down payment. And so the hard money company will give you a proof of funds for, let's just say a property up to, say 400,000. And they may have checked off a box that says up to 80% LTV. And then if the agent's really reading the proof of funds, she'll say, okay, well, your hard money letter here says it's good up to 80% of 400 grand. But I still need you to show me where the 20% is coming from.
Right.
And then you've got to now.
I got another problem
for 100 grand. So it's easier just to get a letter from Jerry's Flipster program or emailing me.
Yeah, there is one hack strategy around this that I teach sometimes. I don't do this because I don't need to do it, but some people might try this, which is you'll tell the agent, you say, look, for me to give you a proof of funds, I'm going to need to go to my investors, and my investors aren't going to want to take the time to underwrite me for that unless I have a contract. So let's go ahead and execute a contract on the price we agreed on. Let's have a contingency that says I have 5 days post-contract to provide that, and then I'll get that to you. And if I can't get that to you in 5 days, then you could cancel the contract, right? And what you're doing is you're buying yourself a little bit of time. You're getting yourself a contract. Now you can take that to either your cash buyer and say, hey, can you bring your proof of funds? Or a hard money company is now willing to look at it because you have a contract. Whenever you have a contract, everybody's willing to take a look.
Sure.
When you don't have a contract and it's hey, I'm looking at a property,
Yeah.
everyone's kind of like, am I
It's
wasting my
not
time?
done yet. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
pie
why
in the
am I
sky yet.
like if you came to me and you said, hey, can I have a proof of funds so that I can make an offer? I'd be like, waste of my time.
Yeah.
Like that's a waste of time because you don't even know if they've accepted your price.
Right.
You bring me a contract and you say, hey, can you take a look at this? Okay, yeah, that's a whole nother story. With PML, hard money, everybody. So that's one hack strategy too around that.
Yep. And earnest money goes in just with that, right?
With it.
I have it with option fees and earnest monies, right? So that's number 14, but we'll deal with it right now. How do you deal with EMD and option fees?
So you could do the same thing. You could say, look, let's have an inspection contingency and I'll pay the earnest money at the end of inspection. That's one way around it. And then you get your cash buyer. You guys catching that? So what happens is usually you have 24 hours, sometimes 48 hours to submit the earnest money. Let's back up a second. With on market, agents are almost always going to require that you put down earnest money. Now, what is earnest money?
Usually 1%.
Yeah. In some markets, like in the Midwest, like Ohio, Michigan, sometimes you can just get away with like a $500, whatever the price. But typically it's $500, $1,000, 1%. And this is money that is going to sit in escrow at title or in the agent's dedicated escrow account. It's going to sit there until closing, and then if you wholesale, it would get refunded back to you. If you purchase, it gets applied towards the purchase. Well, what that means is you got to have $500 or $1,000 to go under contract.
Correct.
Now, one thing everyone has to understand, we don't see this as much anymore. We used to see it. It used to be that you couldn't even submit your offer unless you submitted the EM check with it.
Wow, yeah. For me, it's always been after the fact.
Yeah, and it should be. So make sure if an agent ever wants to see that. Sometimes what they'll want is they'll want a picture of it to make your offer look good, and then we just take a picture of a check, but don't actually give the check. Yeah. So the earnest money isn't due until you have a fully executed contract.
Right.
But this earnest money becomes a real conflict for some people because I've had in some of my markets where we've got 20 grand in earnest money out that month, sitting in escrow somewhere, and it's cash. Right. So it's affecting cash flow, right? Yeah. You know, so it can become a thing that you have to manage and think about and worry about and deal with. But there's some ways around that. Yeah. What are your thoughts on it?
I think that those are all great points. The deferring the EMD is probably my favorite that you just described. Another thing that you could do is find a gator, right? Mm-hmm. If you guys are familiar with Pace Morby, I'm sure you are watching this channel. Pace Morby's Gator Tribe are pretty much, that's their business model, is funding EMD for wholesale deals. So come to Wholesale Hotline, go to the chat and say, who in here is a gator? And in like 10 seconds, you'll be inundated with gators. Yeah. And they're all willing to put up EMD for you. Of course, they're going to want a piece of the deal, but so what?
Get your deal done.
Get your deal done, right? So you work with a gator, or you could work with a Keegley franchise. My Keegley franchises will actually put EMD up for you on your behalf and not charge you any fee, but we're not in every market, whereas a gator is pretty much in every market. So depending on the market and depending on the situation and depending on the amount, you need to kind of work with that in those parameters.
While we're talking about this, I use EMD as a powerful negotiating tactic.
Big time. I just did that on a deal.
How big was it?
So I went in originally with a $2,000 EMD. So what happened was it was an on-market listed property, and it was priced really well. Yeah. She had it listed at $295. The ARV was $500, and it's in the west side of Phoenix, so just a bread and butter kind of house for us. And I put in $2,000 EMD. I went in at full price, and I had dual agency with the agent, right? So she calls me and says, all right, I've got a $300,000 offer. And it's $5,000 higher, and it's waiving inspection, and you've got a 3-day inspection, and it has $5,000 EMD.
Wow, but they gave you last shot, sounds like.
But she gave me last shot because she was dual agency.
Yeah, that's how powerful
That's how powerful dual agency was. So she even told me what the other offer was. Yeah. Which I don't know if
they're not supposed to do that, but
she told me she told me what the offer was, and I'm like, all right, I'll go to 300. I'll match the 300, but to make my offer stronger, I'll increase my EMD to 10K, and I'll waive inspection as well. So I waived the IP. I increased the EMD to $10,000. I won the contract. So much so, there was another buyer who came in after me at 310, and they wanted a 2-day inspection. And my 300 beat the 310 because of my EMD and waiving the IP.
A lot of people misunderstand that price is your only negotiating factor, and it's not. So what else do you have? You have inspection. So that could be no inspections, obviously the most powerful. And then any day you add is going to make your offer less legitimate, right? Because what does it mean? What it communicates to a seller is you're unsure.
Right.
You're unsure about this purchase, so you need contingencies. You don't want to put a lot of skin in the game. So the more skin in the game and the less contingencies, the more serious a buyer you are. And a lot of sellers they're more interested in security of a closing than they are in price.
Absolutely.
So what you did is you said, look, I'll match price there. We're equal now. But where I'm going to beat this out is not by paying more. You could have said, I'll go 305, right?
Right.
But what you did is you said, I'll match price, but I'll beat them on terms. And when I say terms of the contract.
Correct.
So your terms could be closed sooner. There's really a couple. Closing date, earnest money, size of it, and inspection contingency.
Correct. Yeah.
Any others?
Yeah. One of the ones that have been really good for wholesale contracts is that the seller can leave behind any items.
Yeah.
They love that because they don't want to dispose of the stuff. Sometimes they call the junk people over and they find out it's going to be like $5,000. Dumping fees are expensive.
Yeah.
Right. And
for them, it's going to be twice as much as us. Yeah.
Because we've got contractors and bins and they don't. Right.
Yeah.
So they're calling 1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Yeah.
And those guys are charging them
retail
for it. Right. So offering to take care of that, and then also offering to pay sellers closing costs.
Yeah.
Here's a secret in wholesale. Your buyer is already trained to pay all the closing costs. And for the most part, most buyers who buy from wholesalers, they're expecting to pay for all the closing costs.
Because they know that's what we offer.
They know that's what we offer in our offer. So offering that yourself as a negotiating tool, like, by the way, I'll also pay all the seller's closing costs.
Yeah.
It's tasty.
Yeah. It's just like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm winning here.
I'm winning. Yep. Yeah.
All
right. So this next one is becoming more and more contentious in the world of wholesaling. And that's the unassignable contract, right? So you've got
some states are even requiring that there's the seller agrees to an assignment. I think
it's in Florida. They've got the assignability clause in there, and so the assignable contract becomes a problem, right? So the area for me. So what I do is I put it in my buyer name. So let's just say it's Jamil Damji LLC and/or designated entity. That's the way that I write my assignability clause. And/or designated entity sounds better than and/or assignee. It sounds better than and/or nominee. And/or designated entity now, because I'm wanting to designate an entity. It's the same thing, but it's not the same thing as assigning.
Great.
And
That's
so
great.
those terms, they're more professional. I learned that actually from D.R. Horton. So they used and/or designated entity. And when I seen that on the contract, I'm like, what does it mean? And when I asked the agent why they put that there, they said, well, it's D.R. Horton. They don't know what company they're going to close in.
They're probably going to form a new one.
That makes sense, right? And so when I say to an agent, well, what does designated entity mean? Well, I don't know. I don't know what company I'm going to close in. I've got multiple LLCs. I don't know which one's going to need a tax break. I don't know if it's going to be me or a funding partner that takes this deal down.
We don't even know if it's going to be my flipping company or my rental company or one of my partners' entities.
We don't know yet. And so, makes sense. And so then that really just massages through the assignability or the designation clause. Then if it's just not going to work, right? If they're like, no, none of that's allowed. We don't want to do any of that. I will then just use transactional funding.
And double close.
And double close it.
And just double close it,
Yeah,
just to keep it simple. Yeah. I think too, one thing that people need to remember is all contracts are assignable unless stated otherwise, right? So if you are in a state that there's nothing in there that says you can't assign it, technically you don't need to add and/or assigns or even and/or designated entity because it's already assignable. So what I see a lot of people do is they flag everybody that you're going to assign it when you put that in there. Like you red flag it. You're like, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, well, what does this mean? Why are you doing that? And what entity? Are you a wholesaler? And they get all weird about it. And it's just an objection that you sometimes create that you don't need to create.
Correct.
Yeah. Now we're all about transparency. So I'm not saying hide what you're doing. I'm just saying if the contract does not say it's not assignable, it's assignable.
Right.
Now you could still add it and maybe that makes you feel a little better about it.
Sure.
And there's nothing wrong with like doubling up and making sure.
Right.
But that's just something to keep in mind.
All contracts are assignable unless otherwise stated.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's just the rule, and so you don't even need to have and/or designated entity. But like Jerry said, the correct thing to do would be to just have it there.
Now, one thing to keep in mind too is if you're dealing with any type of bank property, those are going to have no assignment clauses. If it's a short sale, REO, they're going to have them, and they're not going to waive them. Trust me, I've tried.
Correct. Yep.
They just won't.
Yep.
So then you've got to think about some workarounds on that, which is double close,
transactional funding.
double close of transactional funding.
2 title companies.
Yep.
That's actually one of the hardest ways to do it. I did a REO where I had AB at one title company, BC at another title company.
Oh my gosh.
And it was the only way I could do it. And so we had the BC had to close first. It funded the AB. And they had to communicate between each other, and there were 2 non-affiliated title companies. It worked, but it was
brain damage.
It was brain damage.
Yeah.
It was the hardest I ever worked for $10,000.
Yeah, there is another strategy that we do, you and I were talking about earlier today, which is an LLC. There's some nuance to that. I'll put a link to a video if you guys want, but basically you're going to set up a new LLC that holds the contract, and then you're going to sell the membership rights of that LLC to your buyer. That way there's still a single transaction. There's not a double close, and you didn't change the buyer of contract, right? The buyer stayed the same. The members of the entity changed. So if that went right over your head and you were totally confused by that, you can watch a video where I break that down. But for the most part, though, you are going to need to deal with this idea around assignment. Now, Jamil, is this also a trap where we need to talk to the agent about what we're doing, or does that come up a different spot, or is this the right spot for that?
It could be. I mean, if they start asking the questions, then that's when I'll just flat out
Talk
tell them
about
what's going on.
Talk about it. Yeah.
And here's how I like to present it. I'm in the business of real estate, so the reality is that I don't really know what my exit's going to be until I'm in the weeds in the inspection. And so that means I got to have my contractors there. We got to be really looking at numbers. I got to be sharpening my pencil. And so I use a multitude of exit strategies. I could buy and hold. I might fix and flip. Sometimes I just sell it to a buddy. I don't know what I'm going to do until we're in that inspection period. So I need the option open to me, which is why I have the clause.
Do you guys catch that? It's just a simple phrasing. Yeah, like I'm not quite sure yet what we're going to do with this deal, who's going to end up with it. It's most agents are like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Investors do different things, right?
Yeah, and it's real. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm an investor, and the fact is I do fix and flip. I do buy and hold. I do wholesale. And I don't know what I'm going to do until I'm in the situation where I'm going to make the decision. Yeah. That's not right now. That's during the inspection period.
Now, if you know with 100% certainty that you are not going to buy it, that you are not going to rent it, you are not going to flip it, and you most definitely are going to wholesale it,
say it.
Don't lie and say sometimes we flip, sometimes we rent. Yeah. Jamil can say that. I can say that because it's true.
Correct.
If you can't say that with honesty, don't say it. Instead, say something better, which what I tell people to say is say, look, I work with a group of investors and partners. These are active investors in the market. And my job is to work with them on acquisitions. And maybe one of them is going to actually step in and buy the property. So I'm just open. I'm just like, yeah. I say it in a way to where I actually never say the word wholesaling.
Correct.
Because I know wholesaling for some agents, they just go,
it's a dirty word. They don't get it, right?
Yeah. And so like if they say, are you going to wholesale this?
It's so weird that
wholesaling
has that kind of thing.
I hate it.
Like, what could be undone? What could be unburdened by what has been done? Who said that really badly?
Now I know what it means.
Yes!
I didn't know what it meant before. It's a wholesaling thing.
To be unburdened by what has been. That's a wholesaling term.
Now you know.
Yeah.
In case you were wondering too.
It's a great. If you know what we're talking about, then
leave a comment.
You're leaving a comment.
Leave a comment and say you know exactly what we're talking about.
But yes.
But in honesty though, like, are you going to wholesale the property? Jamil, are you a wholesaler? Do we sometimes assign contracts? No, yes. I just rephrased it and I took wholesaler out of the equation, right? Yeah. Do we sometimes assign our contracts? Yeah, sometimes we do that. Yeah. I work with a group of investors and sometimes we hand it off to them.
Yeah. Are you wholesaling this? Sometimes I bring in a funding partner into the deal and they take the property down for me. Yeah. Or they take the property down and take it for themselves. Again,
that's the same thing.
Describing
what we do.
The mechanics, and I just am not saying the word. Like, the word itself is the issue, not the mechanics of what we do. And to just tell you guys in reality, I was just telling Jerry earlier today, I was involved in a deal with D.R. Horton, America's national home builder. Like, this is
publicly traded
company. They bought a parcel of land from me. They contracted the land. They wholesaled a portion of it to another builder. Then they used the profits from the wholesale of the land that they sold to close their portion of the land that they bought from me. And so D.R. Horton actually didn't come to the table with any money.
But wait, wholesaling's illegal. Nobody does that.
Right.
But
Publicly
us.
traded companies do it.
That's not a real business.
Crazy, right?
Not true.
Not true at all.
Not true. The biggest home builder in America, or one of the biggest, does it.
Exactly. And they do it routinely. It's not just me, little old me they did that with. They've got hundreds of contracts out there in the country right now, and many of them are going to be assigned.
Yeah. You know, the LLC thing too, like most transactions on the commercial level, you're not buying the property, you buy the entity that owns the property. Like that's a normal thing.
Right.
So guys, some of the stuff that you, and that's maybe a great one too, is I have people that will tell me, well, the agent said this, as if whatever that agent said is somehow gospel. Right. And it's like, just because the agent said that doesn't mean it's actually true.
Right. I mean, some agents,
they don't know.
99% of real estate agents don't know how to comp properties. Or at least they weren't taught how to comp properties in licensing school, and then they had to learn it in continuing education or somewhere else.
Yeah. I have my broker's license, and when I got my salesperson license and my broker's license, not one of those classes was about how to comp properties.
Isn't that strange?
That's the most important skill you could gain as an agent.
Right? How does that... I still can't reconcile that with.
But I know how many square feet are in an acre.
Yeah, 43,000. And
I know that.
It's 43,000
and some change.
And some change,
Yeah.
All right, we're almost there, guys. I know this has been a lot, but you can tell that we've been doing this a long time. That's why we got these traps. The next one is the mutual cancellation clause.
Ooh.
Oh.
Talk about that.
Ooh, mutual cancellation clause. Okay, for all you Floridians, this is in there. Mutual cancellation clause means that both the buyer and the seller have to agree to cancel the contract in order for the buyer to get their EMD back. Now, if you are wholesaling a property and for whatever reason you piss your seller off, say you do a showing and 5 people show up to the showing and the seller's mad, or let's just say they're just mad because you had to cancel, or they're mad because you asked for a renegotiation, or they're just mad for whatever reason. The problem is that if they don't sign on the cancellation, your EMD is going to be stuck and hold up in that title company for months, if not forever. And
I have some still there from years.
From
they just stuck.
They just
I wonder,
come
they
out.
probably spent it on something.
Right? It never gets out.
Yeah.
And so you have to ask if there is a mutual cancellation clause. You need to strike it, and you need to convert that to a unilateral cancellation clause where buyer has the sole right to cancel the contract at buyer's full discretion.
Very good.
Right? That one actually cost me probably 40 grand to learn because we were doing business in Florida, and you know, of course, when you're first getting started, you cancel some deals, and there were sellers that got salty, and they just jammed us up for all the EMD, and it got stuck there, and we were just never able to get it out.
Yeah, in fact, whatever state you're in, call your title company and ask them how they handle EMD disputes, right? Because like in Arizona, it goes to a mitigation department,
right,
and they actually look at both sides and they make a call.
Right.
So I've had a couple times, you know about one of them, where my EMD was tied up. It went to whatever they call that.
Yeah, arbitration.
Arbitration, yeah. And they gave me back my earnest money.
Yep.
Right? So do they handle it that way? Is it a mutual? How is it handled? Because...
Was that a Randy deal?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
And they gave it back to me.
Yeah, of course they did.
Because they looked at it and they were like,
what is he doing?
Yeah.
Dang. Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So the mutual cancellation clause, it's an EMD risk. So you guys just make sure unilateral cancellation. Now, the next one is more of an emotional trap, but it's still there. The cancellation guilt trip.
Guilt trip.
The guilt trip. The agent
cancellation
guilts you
guilt
out.
trip.
They're like, what are you doing? How could you do this? I can't believe you're
Once they
canceling."
find out.
Once you tell them it's time to
Gotcha,
cancel,
gotcha.
I can't move forward with this. And they just put the screws on you.
Oh, yeah.
Right? They're just like, they put you through every...
Can't believe you would do this.
Can't believe you would do this. How could you? My seller or this or that.
Yeah.
It's just this emotional drama. How did you overcome that in your first cancellation when you had a salty agent that was upset that you were canceling?
I bought into all of it. Like, I felt like crap.
Yeah.
Like, I felt so bad.
Me too.
I felt like, oh my gosh, everyone hates me.
In fact, it made me want to quit.
Yeah,
Me too.
When I was like,
started doing it, and I'm like, oh, I hate that feeling.
The whole world's mad at me.
Yes. And they're gonna tell all their friends, and I'm gonna get ruined at this brokerage, and no one's ever gonna want to work with me again. And you go through all of this nonsense in your mind.
If you've gone through that, leave a comment and let us know. I'm sure you have. That's a horrible place to be in. Everyone's pissed off at you. I had one time where my buyer just didn't show. This was when I would go to closings years ago, and I'm sitting there closing, seller, agent, me, cash buyer, no shows. And they didn't know what was going on, right? Everyone's mad at me.
Oh.
I walked out of there. I felt like such a turd, and it was horrible. Yeah. I mean, what I try to do now is I try to preempt that. And by preempting that, what I mean is I want to prep the agent that there may be a slight chance that there's a renegotiation here or possibly even a cancellation. And so I feel like if I kind of lay that out there to them ahead of time and I give them the terms of what might cause that then when it's time to go back and have that hard conversation, it's always a hard conversation, but when it's time, they're not surprised or taken back. Like if you're wholesaling, there's some sort of a chance that it's not going to, something might not happen, right? And so I never want to give all this certainty unless I actually have the ability to take it down. Now, if I have a plan B to buy it and get funding and buy it, then I'll go in with all the certainty in the world. And I'll tell them, I'll be like, no matter what, I'm closing this. I've got the funding. If I can't find my buyer, I'll buy it.
Right.
That feels good.
Yep.
But a lot of wholesalers, if they can't find the buyer or if something happens and they overcontracted, they have to either renegotiate or back out. So that puts people in a real precarious situation. In fact, it's been very damaging to our industry because a lot of people haphazardly do that or intentionally do that.
Right.
And nothing will fry your on-market strategy more than burning agents because there aren't enough of them for you to burn them all, or a handful of them.
Right.
What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, 100%, dude. I mean, that's for me. I'm never gonna willfully try to piss anybody off, right? Like I'm not gonna try to anger an agent by like just willy-nilly renegotiating or anything like that. It's gonna be based on merit. It's gonna be based on the situation. But the fact is business is business, and I say it in a way like, look, this isn't personal. This is really just the way it works. And sometimes, you can, if you have a business partner, and I only use this if you have one, but sometimes you just make the other person the bad guy. Like, I was really fighting for this one, but when we went to it, my partner hated it, and so I'm just sorry. We had to move. We had to decide to go another direction.
One thing I do is what you want to you never want to just cancel without a legit reason.
Very, very true.
Right. And the best legit reason is you miscalculated repairs.
Yep.
It's hard to say I miscalculated ARV because that's your job. You should have done that. But repairs is one that you can very easily miscalculate. So I'll say to the agent, I'll say, look, I'm really sorry this is happening, but this number doesn't work because as we've done our due diligence, we've realized that our rehab budget on this is 45, not 35. We thought it was 35. It's actually 45. Now, where are you getting that? Could be your cash buyers are giving you that feedback, right?
Sure.
But then I'll go back and I'll say, and here's why. Like, we didn't think it needed a roof. It needs a roof. We got some bids. Like, I actually go that far and be like, here's why it's going to cost us more. We didn't know about this, this, and this. Or sometimes it might be, you know what? I really missed it. I didn't know that this was next to a homeless shelter and there are 500 people lined up on the sidewalk every day. I didn't realize that when we contracted this. Now I gathered that information. So I'm really but I have a reason.
Yeah.
And it softens. It doesn't make it go away necessarily, but it definitely softens it.
It does. And at the end of the day as well, guys, is that you might have an angry agent, you might have a salty agent, and usually that's not coming from the fact that you canceled. It typically has to do with their own economic situation. And so they're just sad because they were expecting the commission and they wanted it to close in the time that it was supposed to close in. And because it's not happening, you might have, they might just be short money, or maybe they really need the funds or whatever it is. You never know what's going on in somebody's life. That's the piece that I have to always keep in mind.
Yeah.
And so I give everybody I can grace, to say, I don't know what's going on with you. I don't know why this person's being the way they're being, but, in any event, I apologize. And, I'll try to make it up for you. I love to say, look, I know this is really sucky, and I do know that we'll do business in the future, and I promise to make it up to you in another deal.
How do you handle, you get the contract, you post it on the local investor Facebook group, and agencies, their contracted property for sale, contract for sale?
That's when I said, I told you I'm an investor. I'm always gonna look at any exit strategy and all exit strategies as I can. So while we're doing our numbers and getting our due diligence, we always just put feelers out there to see if there's other investors that could be interested in wanting to take this from us.
Yeah.
That's it. It's just we do this in tandem of getting our numbers as well, right?
Perfect.
So it's just like we try to put all the balls in the air to make sure that we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. What about this one, Jamil? It's listed for $99.9 and you get it for $89.9. And you put it back out to the market for $99.9, where basically at list price or near list price. And you take that to buyers, and buyers are going to instantly Google it.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, okay, you're offering me this property for the current list price.
How
do you handle that?
It only works if it's brand new listed. If it's a freshly listed property, like day 1, day 2, day 3, it works.
And 99 is a good deal.
And 99 is a good deal. If the numbers if it's well priced and it's been and it's a fresh listing, then buy. And usually I can only go at or even 10K above list. That's the most that I've ever been able to get it.
Yeah.
But
it's weird, Jamil, because it shouldn't matter if it's listed or not. It should matter if the number works.
It's just buyer mentality.
Yeah.
It's
I had this
buyer
one
mentality.
time, Jamil, this was in Pittsburgh, where it was a $99.9. I got the contract for $75. It was a smoking deal. It was good a deal at $99. I got it for $75. I called a buyer and we contracted. We didn't contract. He verbally agreed at $125. I had a $50K. So I did it. It was so. Think about this, guys. $100. I get it $75. He says yes to $125. Needed a big rehab and ARV was whatever, $300 or something. He calls me back 10 minutes later and he's like, dude, this is listed for $100. And I said, yeah, well, what's the problem? He's like, here's what he says. He says, well, I'm at $125 with you. I'm like, yeah. And he says, well, I could have bought it for $100.
You didn't.
That's what I said. I said, but you didn't.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and then I ended up selling to somebody else or whatever. But here's what I tell people. I say, look, there's going to be a certain type of cash buyer that just doesn't do on market. They're going to see it and doesn't matter. The number goes out the window. They think it's not a deal now, whatever they think. So just know that.
That guy actually, though, he'll buy it if there's a big gap.
Yeah, if there would have been, yeah.
If it's the buyer who's like, just like, I could have done that, then you have to bring them something they couldn't have done.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a big gap between list price and sale price.
But if you talk to a buyer and they're like, I'm not interested, it's listed. I have wholesalers that they'll hear that once or twice or 3 times and they'll be like, oh, all buyers don't want on market.
Just that buyer doesn't.
Just that buyer doesn't.
That's
If you've got a deal, there's a buyer.
100%.
I've never not wholesaled an on market property that was a deal.
That's right. True.
I've never not done it. I've not done it where it wasn't a deal.
Right.
But not where it's a deal.
Right.
So just keep talking to more buyers.
Yep. Man, that was awesome.
Did we do, I think there was one, did you talk about how you work the agent on showing the property to your buyers?
Ooh, no, but I wanted to do that in our dispo.
Okay, are we going to get to that one then?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just throw it out there. But guys, you think about it. You've got the contract, right? And now you got to get your buyers in there and you've got to get them access to the property. How do you navigate that with an agent, and especially if it's occupied?
Yeah, so if you want to learn the mechanics on wholesaling,
okay, we're going to cover it on that one.
Houses with agents.
Stay tuned. Okay, guys, hey, we've been talking about this a little bit in previous videos, but Jamil and I are doing something really, really cool. We've never done anything like this before, but we're actually going to get together personally, Jamil and I, in person with a small group of people, and we're going to spend an entire day calling, making offers, whispering in your ear what to say, correcting, critiquing, coaching you on how to do the agent model to perfection. And it's going to be very, very powerful. Like I said, it's going to be a small group.
Yep.
We're talking about doing this maybe at my hotel in Puerto Rico would be cool, or we'll find, depending on when you're watching this, maybe we'll do it in another cool place. But it's going to be small group. There's going to be a link in the description where you can sign up for that. There will be a cost to that. So don't think that that's a free thing. It's going to be, Jamil and I are going to bring our A game, and we're going to help you really dial this in so that you can do it at a high level. That's the goal, right? Okay, so check for that link, guys. And remember, there's a playlist link as well to all these videos we're doing, all about how to wholesale with agents. And we'll see you guys on the next video.